Hello everyone, Benji-Sales here, and that's right, it is my favorite time of the month. The NPD report for the month of March has been released. Now, the NPD group tracks all kinds of products across various markets, but we are of course going to be focusing on video game sales in this video, both hardware as well as software. Now, before we get anything else going, I want to give a shout out. Make sure you follow at Matt Piscatella on Twitter if you do not already. He works for the NPD group and he is of course always tweeting out all sorts of awesome sales info and analysis. So make sure you give him a follow. All right, so the video is going to consist of 3 parts. First, we are going to go over hardware sales for the month of March. Second part of the video will be going over the software, and the third and final segment of this video will actually be me grading myself on my prediction. So just like I make NPD breakdown and reaction videos each month to all of the NPD sales, I also do predictions each month, usually like a week or two before the actual report releases. So the final part of this video, I'm going to be grading myself, and let's see how I did. Here's a hint, I did really good. Okay, so let's dive in. All right, so first let's talk about hardware sales. Now, hardware total dollar spend for the month was $282 million, which is actually down 15% from March of last year. Now, the main reason for that is, of course, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Both of those consoles are slowing down as we reach the end of their life cycle, and both of them, were down by double-digit percentages this month. Now, of course, as always, I do not leak NPD data on these videos. I have no intention of ever leaking their numerical data, so don't come here looking for things like that. But, of course, I think percentages are an okay thing to talk about. I won't go into specifics, but general percentages. And the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are majorly down. This now marks 3 months in a row that both consoles are down, and that's something that in the future is only going to continue. Now, the number one hardware for the month, the best-selling console, was of course the Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch was actually up double-digit percentages, which is another trend we've been seeing. So while the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One both slide pretty hard, the Switch is skyrocketing. Now, the Switch is the best-selling system for Q1 by both units and dollar sales. It is also the best Q1 this generation. So the Nintendo Switch, its Q1 performance, this isn't, a total year, or this isn't the peak of any quarter ever, just Q1, right? January through March. It is the highest of this generation, so higher than the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One achieved. And it is up double-digit percentages all 3 months cumulatively. So it's not just, hey, 1 month it was up double digits. As a whole, across those 3 months, up double-digit percentages. So, I mean, this is just an incredible performance, and this is during the slow time of the year for the Switch, right? That is what is crazy about this. The Switch is skyrocketing so hard, and we haven't even gotten to Mario Maker yet. We haven't gotten to Pokemon Sword and Shield. We haven't gotten to the Zelda remakes that are going to be coming out, or all of these various games. I don't need to list them all. Animal Crossing. We have a bunch of huge software hitting at the end of this year for the console, and it's up this strong in Q1, which really has only had Yoshi, New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, and not a whole lot else, right? I mean, it's had a lot of ports and smaller games. I don't want to take away from that, but I mean, in terms of like big, Nintendo first-party software, we haven't gotten a ton of major, massive games yet, and it's performing this strongly. So that's insanely impressive. And here's the other thing. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are both sliding a pretty significant amount, and this is without with a really strong lineup, right? So they've had a lot of great games across January, February, and March. Cumulatively, it's been a very strong Q1 in terms of software. So it's not a case of these consoles slowing, because they're just not getting good games. Like, it's just because we're so late in the generation. They're both holding fairly well. I'm not one of those who thinks that their performance is currently great. I don't think it's terrible either. I'm not sitting here telling you, oh man, they're doing terrible. It's just they're kind of doing around what I expected, right? I expected double-digit percentage drops in 2019 for these consoles, and that's exactly what is happening. Now, I do think a PlayStation 4 price cut is coming in the near future within the next 6 months, so that should hopefully spur some sales. But yeah, I think that's going to pretty much cover my thoughts on the hardware performance for the month. All right, and that is going to lead us to software sales. Now, software totaled $547 million spent, which is actually down 11% from this time last year. There were some very big releases this month, right? We had The Division 2, we had MLB The Show, Sekiro, Yoshi, Devil May Cry. So, we had a lot of really strong software this month. In terms of your number one selling game of the month, that is The Division 2. It is... I would say a strong, good launch, but it is significantly down from the Division 1. I don't think that's too surprising, though, right? I think the vast majority of us expected that, but it still put up, a lot of units. It's still doing, very good. It is the second best-selling game for the year already, right? So, this is an interesting comparison a lot of people were making, which would be the bigger hit, Anthem or The Division 2. I know that they're different games, but they're both in that loot shooter genre. And it definitely seems, at least, that The Division 2 is definitely, off to a stronger start. It has really good word of mouth, so I'm expecting strong legs for this game. So it'll be interesting to watch over time, if this can catch The Division 1's sales. So even though it launched smaller, maybe it can catch up to it. Because The Division 1, it had decent legs. They were okay. Division 2, though, seems to be showing stronger legs, right? Like in other markets we've seen, like in the UK, it's showing really nice holds. So maybe, long term, this might actually be able to catch the Division 1. So anyways, that is your number one seller for the month. Number 2 is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice from Software. Now, this is From's second biggest launch in the US, behind Dark Souls 3. So it was not able to match Dark Souls 3 sales, at least in the US. We know total globally, it was the fastest selling game from Software, at least in terms of its debut. But in the US specifically, it did not pass Dark Souls 3. I don't think that's a big deal. It's a huge success still, right? I mean, it's a great success. It's a brand new IP. Dark Souls 3, that was the third entry for the franchise. There was a lot of hype already built up into it, and Sekiro is a brand new game. Now, of course, it shares some similarities to the Souls titles, but it's still very much its own thing, its own IP, and, it's not going to have instant marketing like Dark Souls has just based off of its name. So that's a very strong debut, in my opinion. Great success for From Software, and, I'm sure we'll get a Sekiro 2 and 3 or whatever, right? It's a new franchise for them. Debuting at number 3 is MLB The Show 19. Now, this is a game a lot of people forget about every year, right? It just seems to kind of almost slide under the radar whenever we're talking about big games. A lot of people don't forget to mention Madden and NBA when they're talking about sports titles for the year, but MLB The Show doesn't, seem to always get a ton of attention brought up to it, but it is a massive seller. And the crazy thing is, you always see all these list wars for exclusives and stuff, and you rarely see The Show mentioned, right? It's always those other hardcore Sony games, The Last of Us, Uncharted, Horizon. Well, The Show is about as awesome selling and consistent selling of an exclusive title as you can get, and that is a PlayStation exclusive. So an excellent debut for it. In fact, it is the best debut in the franchise's history, and it's the best debut for a baseball game in general. So huge success, right? Massive, fantastic performance for MLB 19 The Show. Number 4 is Devil May Cry 5, slides in there. It is the second best selling entry, or fastest, I should say, selling entry in the franchise. So, it did not get number 1. It is the second best debut, but still, I think it's a very good performance overall, right? Even if it didn't break the record for the fastest in the US, I still think it's a really solid performance. I mean, Devil May Cry has never been a massive seller in the first place, so debuting at number 4 is plenty strong enough, I think, for that title. And I'm sure Capcom sees it as a success, so I wouldn't be too worried about it just because it's like, oh, this isn't number 1 or 2. Honestly, in a month as packed as this one was, top 5 is a very strong debut. In terms of rounding out the top 5, we have Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Just amazing legs, right? This game, wow. it's selling incredible. It launched insane, and it's still in your top 5. So fantastic performance there from Smash Ultimate. This is going to be charting for the next however long the Switch is around, right? It might not always be top 5, but I expect this to stay in the charts, at least in that top 20 range for most of the year. I really don't see it leaving the top 20 most of this entire year. So it's one of those Nintendo evergreens, if not the Nintendo evergreen right now for the Switch. Other notable performances, I would say, Yoshi's Crafted World, which was, the only really big Switch release for this month, shows up at number 9 in its debut. It had, a solid amount of tracking days. It was over a week that it was tracked. So this seems an okay result. Not a smashing success out of nowhere, not a huge surprise, but it's also not like a poor performance. It's just a nice, solid little hit there. Should do okay for them in the long run, but nothing to blow the doors off. But like I said, not an underperformance either. Just a nice, solid ranking. We see a really big drop for Anthem. I expected this. It was your number 1 selling title in February, and it drops all the way down to number 11 in its second month. So a steep decline. Granted, we had a lot of big new entries this month, but even still, the fact it couldn't stay even in the top 10, that's pretty telling. So, it's already, only in its second month, already behind a lot of older titles, that have been around for a while, like Red Dead Redemption 2, NBA 2K19. So, of course, these games always sell pretty well, but the fact that in its second month, it can't be higher than some of those older games, it isn't a great sign. I really hope BioWare can turn it around and in the long run, that game can leg out. I never want to see a game underperform. I always want them to do well. So, yeah. Trying to think what else really stands out. Kingdom Hearts 3 is now officially, in terms of dollar sales, the best-selling entry in the Kingdom Hearts franchise ever. So that's incredible. It's the best performance for a Kingdom Hearts title, like I said, by dollar sales. This is not units, but the best ever for Kingdom Hearts, and it is your number 1 seller for the year for 2019 still so far. I can't stress to you how impressive that is for a JRPG. JRPGs are known, I've talked about this in videos before, for just cratering after launch. We're talking 70+% drops like crazy, like super common. Usually these games are extraordinarily front-loaded, and the fact it's held off the Division 2, it's held off Anthem, it's held off games like, Sekiro, like these really big Resident Evil 2 remake, it's held all these off, and it's still your number 1 selling game for 2019 so far. That's insanely impressive. Obviously, it's not going to finish there, but I'm blown away with its performance. It keeps legging well, and yeah, that game, a huge hit for Square Enix. And the final part of this video is going to focus on grading myself for my predictions that I made for the month of March in my separate predictions video. So first, let's look at hardware, right? What did I predict was going to be the hardware results for March? So I predicted Switch up year over year. That's exactly what happened. I predicted Switch as the number 1 selling hardware for the month. That's exactly what happened. I predicted that the Xbox One and the PS4 would both be down year over year. That is exactly what happened. And I also predicted that it would be Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One in your rankings, and that is what happened. So folks, that's a big fat A+ on hardware predictions. I literally got every single thing right that I predicted in terms of hardware. Now, I'm not saying that this was the most super difficult month in the world to predict, but the facts are I got it all right. So A+, knocked it out of the park on my hardware predictions. Now let's look at software. Now, software, I predicted that your number 1 launch would be The Division 2. That's exactly what happened. I predicted that number 2 for the month would be Sekiro, which is what we also saw. I predicted Devil May Cry 5 would be in your top 5 for the month, which is also what happened. However, I did have a slight miss on Devil May Cry 5, right? So this is my first little hiccup on my predictions. I did expect it would have the best launch sales ever for the franchise in the US, and it just missed it. It was second best. So, that's going to dock my score just a little bit. But I did also get part of it right. So I did get top 5 right, but I missed a little bit on it being the best performance there. I also predicted MLB The Show would debut top 5, which is also exactly what happened. And my last one that's kind of right, kind of a miss on software was that I predicted Anthem would be very low top 10 with a big drop. Now, it was actually number 11. So I'm not going to give myself full points here. I'm going to give myself partial points because I also said, I wouldn't surprise me at all if it was in that, 11 to 15 range. So, which is what ended up happening. That part didn't surprise me, but the facts are that my final pick was very low top 10, which it wasn't, right? It was just below it. So, what is my overall score here for my predictions? I'm going to give myself an A, right? It's a very good, right? So, like I said, hardware was an A+, literally 0 misses there. Software was very good. I got almost everything right, but I did have a few couple hiccups. So that keeps me from the A+, right? I didn't have enough misses, I don't think, to be an A- or lower. I still got the vast majority of everything right. So a solid A, just missed that A+. I would have given myself the A+ if Devil May Cry 5 would have gotten the best franchise debut, because I think Anthem was close enough to being an exact prediction. But I just miss out. So an A, to be fair to myself. That's what we're going to grade my predictions for the month of March. Okay, everyone, that is going to wrap up the March NPD video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. As always, I am Benji-Sales. Follow me on Twitter if you don't already, at Benji-Sales. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe. It helps me out a ton. And, go in the comments. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Do you think that the A score I gave myself for my predictions was fair? How did you think about the hardware sales for the month? What do you think about software? What really impressed you? What didn't? Make sure to let me know in the comments. I super appreciate everyone for watching, and I'm loving this little, sales community we're building through my Twitter and YouTube. This is a really cool thing that we're doing. We're getting a little sales community going. So thanks again, everyone. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.